Wes Anderson's name is no stranger to the film community and industry. Thanks to his unique method of visual storytelling, Anderson has successfully owned the title of being an author. To be an author, it is suggested that one's body of work shows a distinctive style and common themes, which we will explore in this video. We will be looking at Anderson's auteuristic style in 5 of his films: The Royal Tenenbaums, The Darjeeling Limited, Rushmore, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and a little bit from the Grand Budapest Hotel. First up, we'll be looking at the camera settings used by Anderson. Anderson's shooting style tends to be consistent throughout his films, which comprise of a series of recurring shots. Firstly, the overhead shot. The overhead shot provides the audience of a perspective intended to convey the idea of watching over the characters and the ongoing situation. Oftentimes, Anderson uses the overhead shot to create an emotional connection between the characters. Like in The Royal Tenenbaums, the overhead shot allows us to witness the death of Royal Tenenbaum with Chas Tenenbaum. Considering that Chas resented Royal the most, the fragility of emotions between Chas and Royal is shown clearly from this shot. In another scene, this overhead shot here looks cramped and messy, in a way making the audiences feel what Richie Tenenbaum is feeling when he was attempting suicide. The overhead shots are used specifically to draw spectators' attention, while amplifying the narrative at the same time. Library book reference shots are also one of Anderson's signature styles. Shots like these could be found in the Royal Tenenbaums and the Grand Budapest Hotel. Yes, they are overhead shots too, but notice how these shots are symmetrically framed? Plenty of symmetrical framing can be found in his films. There is not much reason to why Anderson loves to style his shots like that, but the symmetrical perfection gives Anderson an emphasis on his style. Long tracking, slow motion shots are also a staple in an Anderson film. The use of these kinds of shots gives the audiences a sense of empathy, or a moment which is a break in narrative, and usually is accompanied with a signature 60s song. Deriving the example from the Darjeeling Limited, if we were to compare it to the beginning of the film where the brothers were running individually with their father's suitcases, this time they are running together while tossing their suitcases away and boarding the train. It signifies that the brothers finally overcome their pain towards their father and embark on a new journey together. Another iconic example is from the Royal Tenenbaums, where Margot and Richie reunites in this slow motion shot. It shows the special bond with a hint of sexual tension that these two characters has. The last camera setting discussion will be on blocking, which looks at how actors are arranged in the frame to create meaning with its environment. Using the Royal Tenenbaums, Margot is always seen standing at the far end when serious family meetings happen. This is because Margot is adopted and she constantly feels like an outcast in the family. Next example would be from The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. If we observe closely, the arrangement of seating of the characters depends on how close they are to Zissou in the center. Next up, we will be looking at the use of color and costumes in Wes Anderson's films, which relates to the thematic style of his films. Of course, there are a lot more colors to be explored in Wes Anderson's films, but yellow and red are the most prominent ones in his films, which serve as our main discussion in the upcoming part. Wes Anderson utilizes color as an expression of society through his personal lens. The use of various hue and saturation of color is particularly strong in his films, which set a fairy tale-like mood in all of his films. First up, let's look at the color red being used in his films. Red, in Anderson's films, seems to be the color for longing and having deep traumas with issues related to fatherhood. The color red for Royal Tenenbaums symbolizes wealth and stability. Although Royal is successful, his style of parenting created a trace of emotional issues for his children, as in this scene where the father tells their children that he and the mother are divorcing. The reddish hue shot depicts the trauma stamped onto the children, which later on could be seen more obviously through the character of Chas Tenenbaum with his red Adidas tracksuit. These three characters are dressed identically, presumably to show their solidity as a family unit. But personally, it looks like Chas is carrying the trauma of fatherhood and coping with the loss of his wife Rachel together onto and with his sons. In The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, Zissou is a semi-accomplished marine documentarian. He can be seen wearing a red beanie with his film crew throughout the film, which presumably is showing that Sisu is grieving over Esteban, Sisu's mentor who was eaten by the shark that he is seeking revenge of, and the issues of fatherhood which Sisu told Ned when he seeked out to Sisu.
Because I hate fathers and I never wanted to be one.
In Rushmore, Max is seen with a red beanie as well. Max looked up to Herman a lot because he is a successful man, which he hoped his own father, which is a caring and supportive father, to be more of a successful figure in his life instead of a barber. On the other hand, although Herman is successful, he has a distant and frustrating relationship with his own sons and wife. Thus, he can be seen wearing a pair of red trunks while diving into the pool in this scene, to sort of drown out from his problems, but the boy in red swims around him to remind him of his failed fatherhood. The last element of red and fatherhood to be discussed is in the Darjeeling Limited, where the red car is the most vibrant of all. The red car is their father's most treasured item, and is the only item that connected the father to their sons. The brothers tried bringing the car to him during his funeral, but covered it back in the end at the mechanic shop because the car is not ready yet, like how they could never patch the void of the relationship with their father. Next up, we will be looking at the color yellow. Yellow is another color often used by Wes Anderson in his films, which symbolizes optimism and peace. In the Royal Tenenbaums, Richie is lying in his yellow tent after getting to know that Royal is sick. Similarly, later in the film, Margot came into Richie's yellow tent for comfort when he was hospitalized for attempted suicide. Here, we can see that the yellow tent acts as a safe space for both of the characters. Yellow in The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou is the color of happiness, just like his submarine, because it's the only thing that gave Zissou happiness and a purpose, to search for the sea creature that he was looking for. In the Darjeeling Limited, the color yellow is used slightly different from our previous discussions. The color yellow is used during the funeral of the young Indian boy speaks a lot about death and grief. Here, it embraces the death of the boy openly, involving everyone in the village grieving over the death of the boy. Unlike the flashback scene where the brothers are wearing black, in preparations to attend their absent father's funeral, their emotions are dark and bottled up. The death of Royal Tenenbaum is also shot with a yellow hue. Although Royal had died from a heart attack in the end, his death has somehow unintentionally united everyone in the family. Chaz and his children are seen wearing black tracksuits this time, which sort of symbolizes Chaz has finally come to terms with his past trauma and is moving on from it. Similarly in Rushmore, black symbolizes the truth, whereas red is Herman's fear with his two sons. This scene shows Herman's inner truth because of his son pinning down the boy in black, along with the line,
Never in my wildest imagination did I ever dream I would have sons like this.
showing him being unready to accept the truth of his sons. Lastly, we can surely notice the recurrent use of characters in Wes Anderson films, like Bill Murray in Rushmore as Herman Bloom, as Raleigh St. Clair in The Royal Tenenbaums, and as Steve Zissou in The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, Luke Wilson as Richie in The Royal Tenenbaums, and Dr. Peter Flynn in Rushmore, Jason Schwartzman as Max Fisher in Rushmore, as Jack Whitman in The Darjeeling Limited, as the receptionist in the Grand Budapest Hotel, Seymour Cassel as Bert Fisher in Rushmore, as Elevator Boy Dusty in The Royal Tenenbaum, as Esteban in The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and so on. All of these repeating characters gives Wes Anderson's film some kind of branding, or better yet, an authoristic style. Nonetheless, the constant collaboration between an actor and a director allows the actor to fully portray a character or a feeling that the director wants, since they have been working with each other on so many films. Speaking of themes like fatherhood and death, there are also several recurring themes in Anderson's films, like conflict between male leads in The Darjeeling Limited, The Royal Tenenbaums, and Rushmore. Forbidden love story, like in The Royal Tenenbaums between Richie and Margot, which they by law are siblings but technically unrelated by blood. In Rushmore, between Max and Professor Miss Bloom, where a student wanting to date a teacher. In The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, a love triangle between Ned, Jane, and Sisu, and the Darjeeling Limited, where Jack has a brief love affair with the train waitress, who is in a relationship with the train conductor. And in the Grand Budapest Hotel, where Gustav is in a relationship with an older woman, Madame D. There are of course a whole lot of other themes that we could find in Anderson's films, like sibling rivalry and the broken family. But these 5 that we've touched upon are the most prominent ones in his films, which has credited himself as a modern author. His films are often social indicators, most of the time a broken family or person that ends up being a whole again. Anderson's author style is largely based on his life experiences growing up. Without the disappointment he has faced, there will be no such thing as an Andersonian style in filmmaking. Wes Anderson's quirky style definitely intrigued most of us in some kind of way. Thank you for watching.